Welcome back to our Super Fire series that we've been talking about to round out the year of 2025. All of these outdated health and wellness trends that, let's be real, we've got to leave them behind, right? We're coming up on a new year. We're coming into 2026 and we have so much more information and access to more information, yet we're still doing some of these things with very outdated rules, outdated beliefs, and outdated systems. So I'm here to talk about it. So welcome to Learn with Flow. If you are new here, welcome. If you have missed the first two episodes of this outdated health and wellness trends that we are leaving behind in 2025 and welcoming new ones in 2026, there are two episodes that we have dove into already. One talking about all of the nutritional trends and some of the biggest myths around protein that we are absolutely leaving behind in 2025. And also we talked about in episode 2, we really talked about the whole concept of how lab testing needs a whole upgrade, because a lot of times we are not even testing for the right things, hence why individuals get stuck into the frustrating cycle of their labs look normal, yet they feel anything but normal. So if you missed either of those last two episodes, you can either go under my recorded reels tab where you'll find those, or you can jump over to my YouTube page for even easier viewing experience over there, because today we are going to be jumping into episode 3 of this series. And it's going to be a juicy one because we are going to be talking about all things stress. And when I say stress, it's not one of those things to glaze over. This is one of those real life conversations of how frustrating it is when a health professional sits in front of you and tries to blame any of your symptoms or any of your experiences on stress. So frustrating, right? But then also what I've seen over the course of especially 2025 in the chronic illness community for sure is we've started to rebrand this conversation of stress around nervous system regulation. So if you've ever seen this term nervous system regulation, really what they're also saying is stress. They're just using fancy marketing and a fancy rebrand. Now I've done a whole episode about this prior, so I'm not going to go into the specifics of just how that evolution got here of us talking about stress and then us just putting different fancy language on it and calling it nervous system regulation. What I really want to talk about today is honestly the thought process that we need to leave behind in 2025 around these conversations, because we are not defining stress or nervous system regulation well for individuals, and we are marketing it as something that you can smudge some sage on, something that you can journal and you can cold plunge and you can vagus nerve stimulate your way into this enlightenment mode, right? But I'm telling you, if you are still operating in a dysregulated life or ignoring what your body has been screaming to you for years, or have a large amount of stress coming from your physical body that is being ignored, I'm sorry, but all we're doing is numbing. Okay, we're pulling in this conversation, this frustrating conversation that we all knew about stress, right? We started to kind of glaze over and ignore this whole gaslighting response of stress. And now we just started calling it nervous system regulation. And all of the different practitioners and individuals that I'm seeing talking about nervous system regulation, they mean well. And the tools that they're giving are helpful. But really, when I look at them, I'm like, that's just numbing. All you're doing is you're just teaching people how to numb. You're giving them another quick fix. In the world where we're supposed to be talking about root cause medicine and root cause strategies, we're thinking that we're doing this root cause resolution of nervous system regulation, but really we're kind of still following a lot of these outdated methods and some of these half truths around the wellness industry's focus on stress. And really, ideally, I think we need a conversation about the physiology at play here and what a very science forward method is asking us to think about when it comes to stress. Okay, so yes, stress and nervous system regulation, to me, those terms are really synonymous in the health and wellness field. So I'll kind of bounce back and forth between using those two terms interchangeably, because quite frankly, the nervous system regulation is just a fancier rebranding strategy for the concept of stress. So we're, like I said, just in this in this kind of like middle ground conversation of talking about the evolution of where we got here in the first place. Let's take a little bit of a tour through time, shall we? And first we had, this will go back to how different generations have experienced this conversation around stress, especially it being kind of positioned as the sole blame or the sole contributor to a lot of their different health ailments or any of their different symptoms. So first we kind of go back to the generation. I think a lot of you can maybe remember them. Either you were part of this generation, currently are still part of this generation, or maybe it feels like more of your parents' generation or grandparents' generation of we had this generation of individuals that, let's be real, they ignored stress completely. Okay. I'm talking about the boomer generation, your early Gen X kind of generation who were praised for their amount of stoicism and how much they could just internalize everything. They could take these big emotions, shove them down, rub some dirt on it, weren't allowed to show emotion, weren't allowed to cry, and really had a lot of that internalized or repressed emotions. Trauma, we repressed it. Emotions, we don't talk about those things. You sucked it up. You smiled through the dysfunction. You maybe drank wine at the end of the night to cope with it, right? Like that's kind of that first generation's thought process on stress evolution. So rightfully so, we had this big generation where stress wasn't even something that we could talk about from a medical complex. And so now then came the generation where everything is blamed on stress. So we kind of went 180 here from it not showing up in the medical landscape at all to us being a little bit more aware that stress is a thing. Stress is a problem. Our mental body and physical body are absolutely connected. But then we took a 180 in kind of your standard medical complex. And I would say especially women got a big brunt of this. Where this generation was just told by every medical professional in their life that it was stress. Every symptom, you're stressed. Your hair's falling out. Oh, you're just stressed. You have gut issues. You're stressed. You have chronic fatigue. It's probably just stress. But instead of guiding people through, I don't know, what does stress actually mean and what is it biologically asking them to address, it became just honestly another gaslighting conversation, which is super not helpful. And they were just told, oh, you're just overwhelmed. Just take a walk, maybe try some yoga, right? Which now has led us into this era of 2025 where we took stress and really just gave it this nervous system regulation rebrand because people got so sick of hearing that like everything is blamed off of stress, which feels, let's be real, very disempowering because there's so many stressors in our life that we feel like are uncontrollable. And so if you're going to blame every one of our health conditions or symptoms on stress, it feels like we can't fix it. It feels like we can't change it. It feels like we're just kind of stuck accepting that it's stress and kind of sitting on our hands and just waiting for a season of life where we don't feel stressed. Good luck, right? It's not going to happen. And that's not really the conversation that we should be having. So we took this conversation around stress, which everybody started to just literally glaze their eyes over and like not listen anymore. And we gave it this nervous system regulation rebrand. And so suddenly, all of a sudden, all of us are we're somatic healers. We're selling vagal nerve tools on Amazon. There's trauma release dances on TikTok, and every influencer is like regulating your nervous system and telling you that all of your chronic disease is at the root of nervous system regulation. And we need some lemon balm tea and a massage, right? Now, look, I love all of these tools. I've recommended my fair share of these types of practices. We love a good massage. I love a good Epsom salt bath moment. But the problem is that we have made nervous system regulation just another box to tick, just another trend to follow without actually addressing the real life and physical body and environmental stressors that are keeping us dysregulated in the first place. I'm telling you, you're not going to cold plunge journal, and breath work your way out of a physical body and environment that is causing us to be dysfunctional in the first place. And this is where I always tell people, I'm like, everybody wants healing until healing requires change. Then they're like, maybe not. Maybe sign me up later for that, right? So we all want to regulate until that regulation kind of requires us to take a little bit of a secondary look. And so really what we have to take a look at when it comes to this nervous system conversation is maybe sometimes it's conversations, I have these with my patients all the time. It's like, have we audited our relationships? Like maybe there's a relationship that we need to change or set up some different parameters around. Maybe we have to stop pretending that everything's okay. Maybe we got to stop outsourcing our worth to this hustle and grind culture. Maybe we got to actually feel our grief or our anger that we've been stuffing down for a decade. Maybe we actually have to deal with the underlying gut issues and nutrient depletions and ways that we've like ran ourselves into the ground and just pretending that like collagen in my morning coffee was the cure to that. It's like, but most people don't want that. Most people still want the quick fix Band-Aids, and that's okay. They want the latest adaptogens. They want the latest guided meditation. They want to just like rebrand chaos to their own personality trait. And it's like, oh, that's just who I am, right? And they want to light some sage in a house that is honestly still on fire, okay? And so to me, it's really just a disservice that we've been doing to individuals because we haven't truly defined for people what this conversation is. So if we're going to say that everything is stress or the root cause of your chronic illness and your MCAS and your autoimmune disease is nervous system dysregulation, then we have to really make sure that we are clearly defining for people what that process looks like in terms of their healing then, instead of just giving them more Band-Aids and more quick fix tools, because then it's just more stress because it's just another thing to do. It's just another box to tick, but they're not truly making the change and therefore not truly going to see or feel the transformation on the other side of that. And so then it's just another thing. It might as well just be another gadget that gets thrown into the graveyard pile, right? So I think it really makes sense to talk just for a quick second of what is the lowdown when I think about my business and I think about my practice and how I coach individuals with the lowdown holistic medicine methods. What is that definition of stress? What are we really talking about here? We have to understand that stress to our body is a bucket. I think that's the best analogy that we can always come with. Everybody is given the same bucket, okay? If you are a human, we all have the same bucket. We call it a 5-gallon bucket, okay? Now, even though everybody has the same bucket, not everybody's bucket is full or as heavy to the same extent. And also your life is going to go through different seasons where your bucket might be a little fuller or a little heavier than other seasons. Now, every single stressor, controllable, uncontrollable, mental stressor, physical stressor, chemical, environmental, metabolic stressor, it adds water to your bucket, okay? Lack of sleep, add a cup to the bucket. Blood sugar crashes, add another cup to the bucket. Unprocessed grief and childhood trauma, environmental toxins. I have parasites. I'm underfueling. I'm overexercising. I've been exposed to mold. Add a gallon for each of those, right? You can see what I'm talking about when it's not just mental and it's not just uncontrollable stressors. It's also controllable stressors. That is the conversation that we need to be having in the medical field, is not telling people that everything is due to stress, everything is due to nervous system regulation, and then not telling them what to actually focus on. What we want to focus on is the controllables. Do not focus on the uncontrollables. Life is going to life at you every single day, every single season. Do not try to control those because there's never going to be a good time. Life is always going to life, okay? It's the fact that someone has told you that your stress is really the uncontrollables that you're focusing on is going to burn you out so quickly. So eventually, if you're not tackling and understanding, especially these controllable stressors, eventually you're going to reach a day where your bucket is going to overflow, okay? And your body will tell you, whether or not you listen to this or not, your body will absolutely tell you when your bucket's overflowing. We call them symptoms, okay? Anxiety, panic attacks, my gut is flared up, I have migraines, I have skin rashes, I have histamine responses, I have food sensitivities, I have burnout, I've been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. All of these things are literally signs that your stress bucket has now overflowed, okay? So now our goal is, what do most people do? We try to just mop up the overflow of the bucket instead of actually like draining the bucket. We're just going to keep letting it overflow, and we're just going to come around with our mop every day trying to just make sure that the spill doesn't end up on the floor and creating a mess. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like the definition of crazy. Why don't we go to the bucket and figure out what is causing the mess on the floor to begin with? What is causing the bucket to overflow? So stress is not just emotional, and stress is not just your uncontrollable. Stress is literally biochemical. And what I mean by this is, more often than not, when individuals come to me, I can absolutely tell you their bucket is overflowed. I can absolutely tell you that. But what I'm not focusing on is the uncontrollable stressors that they can't change right away. I can't change right away. But the things that I definitely do start to audit and focus on for them is saying, yeah, absolutely. When someone told you that your hormonal chaos was because you were stressed, they actually were right. But they did not define that for you in a way that was actually helpful. They did that in a way that made you feel disempowered and felt like you couldn't make any change around it, right? But really, when I think about like your hormone chaos, yes, your bucket is overflowed. So what do we need to look at? Your body is telling us we need to take a look at your gut. What types of underlying gut infections are happening that have not been cleared yet? What type of chronic immune activation is going on in this system? What kind of viral pathogens, what kind of stealth pathogens are going on right now? What kind of nutrient depletions? Oh my gosh, are we low in B vitamins and magnesium and zinc? We're not even taking in enough proteins or amino acids, or we're not digesting and absorbing them properly because we have low stomach acid, or we have H. pylori, or it's like we have stagnant lymphatic drainage and detoxification symptoms. Your body is in a state of overwhelm. Your nervous system is going to follow that. And so this is where I think the conversation of nervous system regulation and stress forgets that your body absolutely is going to create that state of nervous system dysregulation. And so I see so many individuals where maybe they are in more of that like chronic immune activation. They're in, like I said, a long COVID, an MCAS, an autoimmune pattern, IBS, irritable bowel disease, thyroid issues, Hashimoto's, hormone chaos. Absolutely, all of these situations, they then try to meditate their way out of, breath work their way out of, journal their way out of, therapy their way out of, and all of those tools are great. Eventually they get stuck, because they have not addressed the body stress that nobody told them is going to keep that nervous system on a loop. So you can nervous system regulate your entire day forward if your body, specifically your gut and your immune system, are sending messages to your brain that there is something to be stressed about. None of the nervous system regulation tools are going to work. Point blank, right? You'll just be on this very exhausting roller coaster every day. I love those things, but I just am so passionate about the fact of, I don't want someone thinking that they're going to breath work their way out of microbiome wreckage. They're not going to sound bath your way out of a glutathione crash. You're not going to meditate your way out of nutrient depletions. Like, you have to look under the hood. And I think a lot of times people are misled about this stress conversation. And of course, we're going to go after your bucket. There are uncontrollables and there are controllables. Let's focus on the controllables, take those off of the bucket load. Now your bucket might still be full, or it might now be half full. It might still be heavy, but it's not overflowing. And as long as your bucket's not overflowing, we're good. We're resilient creatures. We can go about life and we can have those moments of highs and we can have those moments of lows. But if we don't have any capacity in our bucket, then every single uncontrollable stressor of life is going to feel traumatic. And this is where I think I'm just like so passionate about today, is because I'm seeing so many individuals that are in a chronic state of gut dysregulation, immune overwhelm, blood sugar crashes, hormonal chaos, and then they get looped into this like mental health diagnoses and mental health labels. And I'm like, how do we even know? How do we even know if that's them or if this is their body talking to their brain in a perfectly healthful way of saying, hey, there is something to be stressed about here. There is something to be overwhelmed about here. There is something to be overstimulated about here, and it is coming from the body. So this is where, when I think about holistic medicine methods and what I work with my clients and patients, of course, like I said, do we also talk about the uncontrollables? Yeah, because that's life, right? We have relationships, we have jobs, we have boundaries, we have finances. We are a moving, like multi-system being, but we really have to address from the body up first. And then a lot of times the brain down really helps complement that. So it can be a both and. I've just found that most people that try to nervous system regulate their way out of a body that is stressed and a bucket that is overflowing tend to feel pretty exhausted, tend to feel pretty overwhelmed, and tend to spin their wheels at most points. So to me, when I'm kind of auditing this, number one, phase one that I work with my patients is we got to identify the body load. I have to audit that stress bucket so that both together, both me and the patient can understand what the heck is filling your bucket, okay? How much of it is uncontrollable stressors, but then how much of it is controllable stressors as well too. Like I said, this is where lab work becomes so imperative, running the right lab work. If we're going to draw blood work, we're going to do comprehensive blood work that actually shows us something more than just your annual physical. And we're also going to think about, what about the gut? What about how our body is actually absorbing and processing these nutrients? What about overall liver detoxification and overall toxin burden on the body? What about blood sugar instability? What about our mitochondria? Like, there's so many things. We're running more than just your comprehensive, or like more than just your basic labs. We're really going to take kind of that comprehensive plan so that we can understand what the heck is filling your bucket. Now we can really like bail this water out of the bucket instead of just trying to like mop up while the faucet is still on. Like, that just sounds like the definition of crazy to me, right? It's like we're like journaling and breath work and sound bath and yoga and meditation and somatic healing and cold plunges and adaptogens and ashwagandha. Meanwhile, like the bathtub water is still on and it's overflowing and we're just sitting there with our mop. I'm like, who's going to turn off the water? Like, that to me is just like the best analogy that I can think of. So once we identify what that overall stress bucket is looking like and audit for that individual person what is contributing to their bucket load, then we think about emptying the bucket. What are those strategic holes that we're going to poke at the bottom of the bucket to try to drain some of this water? It's probably going to be optimizing things like elimination pathways, overall cellular health, overall metabolic waste removal from the body. We're going to be supporting things like gut health and lymph and liver and all of the pathways that modern medicine kind of forgets about, make us a basic, well-operating human, because we're finally unclogging the drain. We're finally turning the water off of things that were overflowing the system to begin with. And then obviously, then we can really loop in some of those deeper nervous system regulation tools tend to come in well to help manage then our bucket going forward. They help us with things of those uncontrollable stressors, right? And now our body is actually ready. Now our body and our nervous system is actually down-regulated enough that we can rewire patterns. We can rebuild safety in the body. We can reintegrate the mental, emotional, spiritual pieces because the biology is now stabilized first. I think a lot of that's why I hear a lot of my patients say, like, No one's ever explained it to me this way. I've never felt so calm in my body before. This is what nervous system regulation actually looks like, not this like performative self-care. I'm like, I know. So if you're kind of tired of the thought process of, your massages and your bubble baths and your deep breaths, if it's not working, if you're using a lot of those tools and you still feel stuck, or someone keeps telling you, oh, your labs are fine, I think it's really time to maybe think outside the box, get a second set of eyes on the situation that you're dealing with, and work with a practitioner that really sees your nervous system. To me, is a mirror. It is a mirror. It's not the problem in and of itself. It's usually reflecting to us what the heck is the body trying to communicate, because the immune system and the nervous system are innately connected together. So if this really resonates with you and you want to really dive into that holistic medicine experience and what I'm talking about, click the link in my profile. It will take you to my website where you can schedule a functional wellness consult for us. That's really the jumping off point to this holistic medicine work. And I am super excited to enter 2026 without these outdated health and wellness trends, and we actually get to start creating real change and real transformation, because we're done with just these band-aids and quick fixes, even though they look like functional medicine. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Tune in next week for more Learn with Lo.